You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry, featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Labaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I'm here with progressive rock singer, composer, and producer, Leo Maia. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Great to talk to you over video.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we were just saying, we've been chatting so much over Instagram recently that it's great to have the chance to, talk somewhat face to face. So just to kick things off then, would you like to start by giving a little bit of a overview of who you are and, what you're doing?
Cool. Well, I'm Leo. I'm a Brazilian, but I moved to Canada, and I'm mainly like a music theory nerd who really likes to learn things. And I'm a singer on top of all. And I like singing techniques and learning a lot about it and teaching people about it. And I always composed and did my own things, but I never released anything or recorded it. But I had something which my lung collapsed last year when I was singing. And since then, I came back and I was like, I can't sing. So what the hell am I going to do? So I was like, oh, I'm going to buy a guitar, I guess, buy a keyboard. And then I started into actually recording stuff, and I prepared everything, for my first track, Pneumothorax, so that when I would be able to sing, then I could record that, the vocals for it. So yeah, now I'm here just recording songs, releasing songs, and getting to know cool people like yourself.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, that's really cool, man. So I know that this is a big story for you, a big part of your journey, the whole Pneumothorax story, which is, of course, as you mentioned, the name of your debut single. As we're recording this, we're doing this just off the back of your second single, Sonhos. So, I'd like to chat about both of these songs, but considering it's so linked into your journey as an artist, could we perhaps go into that story a little bit about Pneumothorax? It's quite an intense one.
Yeah, absolutely. I was honestly just singing. I was singing some Arian, at home, doing some covers, and then I started to feel strong back pain and chest pain, and I was like, oh, maybe it's something muscular. I actually went to a massage guy and got a massage. And then I called the doctor and was like, hey, just to double check, I'm going to get an x-ray. Right. And it was so intense. I couldn't even walk for a block and without feeling dizzy and all that. And then the guy from the x-ray called me, the radiologist called me and said, dude, you got to run to the hospital. You're running on just one lung. I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound great.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was intense. I got to the hospital and they basically cut through my rib and inserted a tube, kind of to drain the air out. And I was there for a week. A lot of feelings on that experience. A lot of PTSD still happening. But when I got home, I decided to just express it all as a song, right? If you listen to Pneumothorax, it's a long song that has a lot of different section with different vibes and different emotions, and that's completely tied to what I was feeling. It starts very calm and peaceful, which represents a nice day at home, and then there's a little breakdown on a sudden change of chords, and then it goes into kind of a Tubular Bells ish Pink Floyd 7x8. That gets you a little afraid, and it's what's going on? That's something weird, this ambience, which represents me just going to the hospital and being afraid, right? And then there's intense harmonic minor stuff in the chorus, which represents pain. And then a lot of anxiety coming into place. And then you finish back into the major like intro, but now like on a speed kind of power metal theme with a triumphant, I like to say, guitar solo, which really represents me going out of the hospital and being discharged, and then back to the piano, which is like I'm home again. But interesting is that I never rap the song, like the chord progression actually ends on a dominant chord and leaves you unresolved, which is exactly like how I would feel. I'm like, is it really over? So that's kind of what it is. Yeah,
I mean, it's an amazing story, man. I don't envy you with it, but that cathartic process of turning it into music is really quite something special, because I mean, I really got that sense of it when I listened to the piece, and especially with the lyric video that kind of provides that visual for it. I mean, that's an amazing piece of artwork that you have, and especially how it's animated, where it's breathing and there's the kind of, I don't know, almost like energy coming forth from the chest, and it just really kind of it puts you into that space, into that tension, and with the lyrics there, it's like I feel like you really follow that story, especially as you said, like so it starts off kind of peaceful and you've got like the flute and such, and then as things start to go strange, you have this like this sequence in 7. And for me, I was thinking about it as in like almost like you can't breathe properly, right? You know, because it's like losing stability to the rhythm of your breath, and that it creates such an uneasy feeling. Like I feel like quite anxious listening to the song in a way, but in a really good way, you know. And the way that you have told that story and used music to do so, like that's really like impressive to me, because it shows me that you have an approach to music that is actually very much like a composer, because you're really painting a picture with the music. And yeah, that's very cool, man. Very cool. But how are you feeling now, like considering, you know, what happened there with actually experiencing it, pneumothorax for yourself?
Yeah, the lung has recovered. The mind, I'm still working on it, right? I still have PTSDs. I've been to the hospital like 3 times just to get an x-ray because I was feeling back pain, and I was like, oh my God, is it happening again? Because it could theoretically happen again. It's spontaneous, right? I still have blabs, which are like little bubbles of air, but actually 20% of the population have it. And most of the time they don't burst, right? It's very rare for something to burst. Just got to be careful and not scuba dive or anything.
Right. So is it to do with like, was it like the pressure of you singing that you've essentially like popped along basically from singing really powerfully, or what do you think was the cause?
Yeah, I was really worried about it, like thinking like, is it my singing? Right. But in the end, like the doctors at least convinced me that it can happen any moment. Like people could, sometimes they wake up at night and they burst a lung. And like you could, there are other activities that you do every day that actually exerts more pressure on the lung than just singing. So it could, it was kind of a coincidence that it was singing, but, and also like I sing so much that, you know, it was probably going to happen when I was singing. But it does get me that whole thing, or like, oh my God, like how should I sing now? Which is interesting because that pushed me to get better at my vocal technique and get better at relaxing, get better at relying less on like compression and working more on like my muscles to reach those notes more comfortably. And I do think I became a better singer in the process. which is kind of cool. And as I was writing the melody, the vocal melody for Pneumothorax, I actually purposely like got some notes into the chorus, which are like, those are the notes which I used to like try hard to get, but I'm going to write those notes and I'm going to get it comfortably. And I actually wrote as I was reading the lyrics, right? I was like, will I ever be able to sing that song? And I'm like, oh, that's a cool lyric. Will I ever sing this song again? And I ended up like hitting those notes really nicely and comfortably with no tension, and even got some grit on it. And I'm very happy like how I grew as a singer as a consequence of that, even though I'm always like feeling, like I still have to work a little bit on my PTSD, but it's working out.
Oh, that's good, man. I mean, I suppose an experience like that really makes you a lot more conscious in a way. So I suppose, as you say about your voice, it makes you think a lot more about that. And it sounds like that's ultimately been a very positive experience in terms of making you a better singer. But I suppose that also kind of expands to life in a way, right? In terms of such a dramatic experience, I guess, puts things into perspective. And the fact that it's been the catalyst for you to launch your artistic career, that as well is a really positive thing ultimately, right? And so, I mean, we've spoken a little bit before, but like, I mean, you've clearly been into music for a long time, right? As you say, you're a singer, but like, you played all the instruments on Pneumothorax at least, right? And you know, you've produced everything yourself. I know that was a new experience as well. But yeah, I'm assuming that you've been into music for a long time. Like, when did you initially get started?
Yeah, I blame it on my dad.
Cool.
When I was like 6-year-old or more or less, he kind of put me on a chair, and one of the things that would play, like the children play, is Pink Floyd The Wall. Like he would put me on a chair and then put either the vinyl, which I have here from him, or the movie itself, which is super lethargic and definitely not tailored to a 6-year-old
child. No way. Yeah, that's pretty intense film as well. Yeah, very psychedelic too, and pretty out there.
Yeah, he would like play that, and whenever like the plane would approach, he would shake my chair, and like,
wow,
he really got me into it, and I really loved that playtime, right? But kind of melted my brain, and I'm like, hey, Dad, you can't complain about anything weird that I do because like you did it,
Yeah, wow, that's gonna shake you up. Yeah, amazing record though. Like The Wall is one of the best records ever, perhaps. I mean, so epic. So that's a good place to start.
Yes, and it's also, I think it also made me connect to storytelling through music,
right?
Because Roger Waters is a great storyteller.
Absolutely,
right? You get all the solos and performances from David Gilmour, but I think the storyteller, it's really Waters. It's amazing how like each note, like you don't have to say anything, but each note, each tempo, each little thing, they will express some type of emotion, and you can really make an emotional storytelling journey through music. And I dig that, and I think that's why I also got a lot into Arion, because it's basically the progressive opera where they're always like telling a story. Yeah. So I decided I wanted to start learning guitar, and then my dad taught a little bit. He has an acoustic guitar, and then I learned some campfire chords. Then I got into like an actual guitar course, like with a teacher. I studied for like 2 years when I was 12. And then I realized that what I really wanted to do is sing, because on my spare time, I wasn't really noodling on my arm. I was actually singing, like listening and discovering at the time Iron Maiden, and eventually got into power metal and those things. And I was just singing along with it. And I'm like, oh, I want to do this properly. So when I was 15 or 16, I got into actual singing lessons. And I studied for 2-3 years at the time. And all across this, like through guitar and singing lessons, I always had theory classes as well.
Great.
And I grew older and I started to learn that theory was, at least for me, the key to being conscious about these decisions. I know without theory, you can do a lot of these decisions and storytell and all those things unconsciously just by feel. But being conscious really helps when you are on a kind of a blank state. You're like, I don't know what to write anymore, but I know I want to convey this emotion. And I was like, oh, sure. Why not put a ninth in there? I know that the ninth will get you that sort of like floating sensation, like kind of feeling. So I'm going to add a ninth chord in here. I'm like, I feel like something's missing here. So I'm going to get a 5/5 type of dominant in it just to modulate or whatever. So it really unlocked me writing compositions, which I started to learn and really get into it. Started to get into jazz and jazz theory. I had some friends played in a little like progressive rock band that we covered Ocean Size and King Crimson and things like that back in Brazil.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah. Then eventually I got here, never managed to record anything before Pneumothorax, but I had all of this, like knowledge on how to write songs, how to compose and singing in general. During the pandemic, I got back to study singing. So I was really just singing every day and learning, and got into more vocal coaches and lessons. Got into mixed voice, which back when I started to study, it was very classical. It was like, there's chest and there's head. You're a man, you're a baritone. You should sing Phantom of the Opera or whatever, do everything in chest, right? And mixed voice is kind of a modern contemporary thing invented by the rock singers, which really didn't know what they were doing, but now we understand it. So I got into a more contemporary type of learned a lot of those things and started to feel more empowered to sing high. Like I have a very low voice, and singing high was always like a challenge for me until I started to learn those things. And that was through the pandemic. Until I burst my lung.
Oh yeah. But yeah, wow. Well, cool, man. That's cool. So yeah, obviously, as I thought, like music has been a big part of your whole life. It's also really interesting to hear you talk about the approach with the theory and stuff, because it does just kind of further emphasize, how you do really approach it as a composer, and that's really cool. I think that it's an interesting debate, this one about theory. I think that ultimately theory is like tools, right? Because what you said about the ninth, you could sort of play around until you accidentally fall upon it, or you could just kind of cut to the chase and be intentional about what you want in the first place. So that being said, like, even if you know all the theory in the world, there's always still that element to it, right? That spontaneity of following a thread and creating something. So but yeah, it's really cool to hear you have that approach, like that you have the knowledge of music theory that you apply, and this vivid kind of storytelling and kind of painting pictures with music. That's very composer-esque. I mean, are you into like film music and things at all as well, or even classical music?
I'm not super into that. Like I like it. I remember like when I was watching Dune, and I had a musician friend that was watching it, and as everyone was hearing it or seeing it, and I was mainly hearing it, I was like, it's so awesome how like Phrygian fits this scene,
right, yeah. Cool.
And like really just like unpacking how, like, because that movie on mute wouldn't have impact.
Oh yeah, I bet. So this is the recent one with Hans Zimmer composing,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
I was assuming so. Yeah, I still haven't seen that, but it's been strongly recommended. I need to catch it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it adds great impact, but it's just that you definitely have that approach with it, where you are writing the music that kind of also tells that story, or reflects the imagery and stuff. And yeah, I find that interesting. So when you're talking about you like vocal lessons, are you teaching yourself, or are you learning online? Like what's been, do you have like a tutor? What's been your approach there?
Yeah, I learned a lot online by researching and getting into it. A lot of misinformation though. Like I remember like the most misinformed thing, which got me to sing wrong for a while, was like around support. People just like on videos on internet with like millions of views, people being like, hey, you have to sing from your belly, and kind of, hey, and kind of contracting as you sing. And that's completely wrong. Like, and once I found out that you actually need to expand instead of contract, you want to keep the air down rather than push it to your throat and create all the tension. It took me a while to find out about that. I actually read it in a book on classical singing, and I was like, that makes sense. Yeah, when you contract the diaphragm, it actually, you inhale. When you relax the diaphragm, you exhale. So if you want to really keep your diaphragm engaging while you're singing, you're actually trying to keep the air in rather than getting the air out. And that was like really pivotal to my singing. Just a quick example. But I've also had a vocal coach here in Vancouver. She's an opera singer. And then I started to get some online lessons with a guy in Australia, which is a tremendous singer. And it was really awesome. Learned a lot through that. But a lot of experimentation with my own voice and seeing what worked and what not. I remember realizing that the little cartoon voice that I'd like to do was really a key to singing high. Like I was like trying to get my manly, deal, round and robust voice to get high. And that was like really creating me a lot of tension. And then I realized that when I'm just messing up with my wife and watching, I can go like, I'm alto, and that's hella high. And I'm super relaxed as I do it. And when it's like, what if I sing like that? I realized that I could sing Judas Priest just like this. I was singing Judas Priest just by doing the alpha voice. And then it was just learning how to make that alpha into a more round and just shaping the vocal tracts. But it's empowering.
So that's awesome. So is that like, I mean, I'm assuming that kind of cartoon voice, as you say, is like a head voice, right? But then is that where the mixed voice concept comes in, with adding that kind of tone to it?
Well, I feel like there are two types of cartoon voices. You can get like the Mickey Mouse, who's like, oh, Mickey Mouse, Mickey's airy, right? So there's a lot of air leaking, and that's completely head voice and falsetto. But alpha, it's more like, ow, it's weird, but you got full vocal closure. And you can actually connect that to your chest voice really nicely, because you have that vocal closure so it doesn't break. I think the break to falsetto is when you lose the vocal in the closure and you end up going to a false chord. So air leaks and you get that no one likes. But by going into the alpha as I went up, I suddenly connected all of those things. And that's what mixed voice is all about, right? Singing that range, which is too low for your falsetto and too high for your chest. And making that with full closure and balancing the two voices. The cartoon character voices helped me on that.
That's really cool, man. Cool. Well, that's you're clearly very knowledgeable about voice. But I mean, that makes sense because you're doing a lot of vocal kind of content as well, right? You were mentioning to me about like the clips you're doing. I think you said on TikTok, right? Was it on TikTok or YouTube Shorts and things like that with vocal tips and?
Yeah, I do it on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts.
Yeah,
mainly
cool.
we'll get the things which are like, what is that thing? Which once I learned or I realized, it changed how I sang. That I really wished that someone would teach me. But every time that I would approach a YouTube video, they will teach just a little bit of it and then be like, hey, I'm selling you my course.
Oh, right.
So I got those little things and I'm like, I got to make like 1 minute or less videos about those little things and start to put out there. So I started a TikTok account. I had 0 followers. And like by the third content, I got to 300 followers. And
nice.
I got like 12,000 views like overnight. And I was like, oh, people actually like that. And I got a lot of subscribers on my YouTube channel, which I really just post shorts on it, like not even like fully fleshed videos. And I realized that people really want to learn those things that I wanted to learn. And I want to, but I'm like, hey, that's not my full-time job. I'm not really trying to get money out of you. I'm really just, I have some spare time. I'm going to use that time to tell you what worked for me. So kind of like vocal lessons from someone who's not a vocal coach and is not trying to sell you anything. And that was cool. Like a lot of people that liked it and they now follow me and they ask for more and they come with like they go in the comments and be like, hey, I'm doing this, I'm feeling that. Do you have any tips? And I'll always reply with a lot of information.
Nice.
Sometimes it gets me just ideas for the next video that I'll put out.
Cool.
And in the end, they all go and they want to also see, look, this guy seems like he knows about voice. Let's hear him sing. So they will go into my music and they will listen to my music. Some people like the style, some people do not like the style, but they are into singing. And they will eventually, I'll use sometimes my music as ways to teach, how to bridge the gap and things like that.
Cool.
So yeah, that's what I'll be doing.
That's awesome, man. I mean, prog rock is a good genre for that anyway, because it's obviously testing that ability somewhat, but also I think that your music is very melodic, and I would say quite accessible, despite the fact that it's obviously very proggy, which is really wonderful. So I kind of think that anybody that's just looking for a good singer, that appreciates good singing, should be able to enjoy your music, just for that to start with, at least. I was actually trying to remember, I can't even remember for sure, to be honest, how we first came across each other, but I think that I did actually see one of your singing videos first, like giving vocal tips, something like that. And thought, oh wow, this guy's a really good singer. And then probably from there clicked on your Instagram and saw like prog rock, metal, composer, blah 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 blah, and thought, oh yeah, sweet, this is this is my kind of guy, So yeah, it's cool, man. It's clearly working for you. So yeah, well done with that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. Like I think throughout this whole music, like getting myself as an artist and singer out there, maybe the greatest thing is to meet people like yourself and to meet new people who are passionate about the same things and share experiences and collaborate. It's really great.
Oh, I agree, man. It's enlightening, especially like when you realize just how many amazing, talented people there are out there that, as well as you say, share this kind of passion. It's very humbling, but also very inspiring. So yeah, really cool. Okay, we've spoken about the singing and stuff there. I suppose that obviously the big thing really is you as an artist, right? And your music career. That's your biggest passion. I'm presuming, and I think you've mentioned to me before as well privately that you had a hard time trying to get a band together and things like that before. that's something that I definitely could relate with a lot, and I'm sure lots of other people could. So you wanted to be a singer in a band, I guess, but it's just hard to really get that group of people together in your town or whatever. I mean, that can be demoralizing, especially when, you know, you've got to work a job and you don't get that much time for it anyway, and feels like it's never going to happen. So, I guess like what it seems to me like what happened with your story really is you had this big cataclysmic moment with the pneumothorax, and from there you essentially thought like, okay, you've just got to basically take full responsibility to make this music, right? And so you literally like got out of hospital basically and went and bought instruments and started teaching yourself how to produce as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, so that's another thing that you've basically gone and self-taught. You just started learning production, mixing, everything, like as well for your first single.
Yeah. I started to get into YouTube, right? I think everyone wants to learn something nowadays. You just go to YouTube, the greatest learning platform. Then I was like, you know, how to record a song, right? And they're like, oh, you need an interface, you need a DAW. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get one. And then I talked to a friend who is a music producer, and like, hey, what do you use? He's like, oh, you should get into Reaper. And I'm like, oh, people talk about Pro Tools, and he was like, well, you're probably gonna get more used to Reaper. It's gonna be more intuitive for you. And I was like, oh, sure. And then I got into Reaper, and I started to record little things just at home and see how that worked, and got into like how does it make it to sound good, and then people were like, oh, you need compression, EQ, reverb, delay. And I was like, sure, I'm just gonna watch 1,000 hours of videos about that. and nice. Got into like little things and how to make it all together. And I ended up releasing Pneumothorax with just free plugins. It's mainly the stock plugins that came with Reaper. And then I got a few like free ones, which just like Google best free compression or whatever. And then I got them and started to get them together, and ended up with Pneumothorax, which, you know, I learned a lot in the process. Like, maybe one day, I think once I have enough song to put together an album, I'm going to go back to it and remix it with all of my new knowledge. Right. Yeah. But I think it turned out pretty okay, especially for a first production with free stuff.
I think like, I honestly think that is the best like first time production that I've ever heard, like hands down. It's crazy that that's the first time that you produced and mixed the whole thing yourself, man. I mean, it's really good. Like it sounds great, and I mean, especially considering that. So I mean, you know, that's testament to, like, as you say, all free software. I mean, the biggest driver there is the fact that you had the, you know, just the determination to do it, and obviously the talent, because like, so as we said with that one, you literally just did everything, right? I mean, I guess it was a lot of programming instruments, MIDI and stuff, and then you're playing guitar and singing, obviously.
Yeah, I bought like guitar, I bought the MIDI controller, right? And I like did a lot of like keyboards and like a MIDI and recorded it. So like the keyboards were also played into it, that's cool. Right, into MIDI. But yeah, the drums, I just had to program them. I obviously don't have a drum around my little home here. But yeah, it's cool. I always liked not programming drums, but composing for drums. I used to have back in my old prog rock like cover band that I had in Brazil, right? I had a drummer who played One More Red Nightmare by King Crimson with his eyes closed. At 12 years old, he was like playing jazz, and really, once he told me like, hey dude, those people who were teenagers and were playing like Metallica or punk rock or whatever, that must have been cool, because I never got that. When I was a teenager, I was already playing like insane polyrhythms, right?
Yeah, just prog and jazz. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would get to this guy and be like, hey dude, why don't you get this arm on 3x4 and this leg on 7x8, and then this other arm can stay on 4/4 and we can meet here. And he's like, oh, you mean like that? And I was like, oh yeah. So I used to program like him, or at least he's a great drummer and he has like great things that he would put together. But I would always like challenge him to go proggier and to do these little things. And he always liked it, and we always worked together, which is great. I miss him. But yeah, and then when I started to program, I was like, yeah, like how I would do it with this friend of mine, and I didn't really try to get the odd time signatures in there. And that's cool. So I programmed the drums.
Yeah, I think you've written great drum parts on both of your songs. Like they definitely really sound like proper prog rock drums, you know, really, really cool rhythms, especially as you say, with all of these alternating time signatures and stuff. It does take a bit more creativity than you know, copy and pasting like 1/3. So yeah, man, great job with it. It's honestly really, really, really impressive.
Thanks.
And so now you've just released Sonhos. You know, as literally just now as we're talking. It's just recently come out, and I really, really love that song as well. For the lyrics are in Portuguese for this song.
Yeah.
Right? From what I gather, it's like an older song that you composed. And I from what I gather, that's the Portuguese word for dreams, right?
Yes.
So what's the vibe and the story for this song?
Yeah, the song is it's kind of abstract and a little liturgic, which dreams usually are, right? The dreams don't always make sense, but they all have a meaning, but it's hidden like behind it, right? So the song is really about your never-ending chase for your dreams and trying to get your dreams. But as you go through it, all dreams, they have fear on it, right? Like you try, and that's a metaphor for like you trying to chase what you want to have in real life. And then you have the fear of not succeeding, fear of something going wrong, feeling of going all in and not doing it. So it's always like, in the chorus, it's about like you almost grabbing that dream. It's almost within your reach, but you never get it because now it's morning again. Like you woke up, gotta go to work, you gotta leave the mundane, right? So it's about that, like never ending chase of your dreams while leaving the mundane. And he ends with a inspirational message, which is just like, you just dream and fly, but make sure you dream outside of your bed sheets. Don't keep your dreams inside your bed sheet. Don't keep your dreams like enclosed. Like go and be someone. That's the last, literally the last little verse is be someone.
Nice. That's so cool, man. That's a great message, and it really suits the vibe of the song. I really like how, so you're essentially talking about dreams in kind of both senses of the word, right? As in like you're talking about hopes and dreams and aspirations in life, but you're also actually talking about the act of dreaming whilst you're asleep. And that's super cool, because that's part of why I asked you, because I was trying to work that out with the song. I was like, okay, I get that it's about dreams, but yeah, what kind of dream? What's the angle here? And so you've kind of interweaved them both, and that's really, really cool. I like the song is just so kind of floaty and vibey in a way that I did just have that feeling as if like kind of like lucid dreaming, you know, as if you're just sort of hovering over your body, kind of floating around in that dreamscape. And so another really, really cool song, man.
Yeah, thanks. And it was that floating thing was very intentional, right? There would be pieces of it, like both on the harmony as well as the just as time signatures, like that there would be a one chord in the middle of the progression supposed to be major, but I make it minor. And it's a borrow where you don't usually see it in borrows. It's like a melodic minor borrow if you would try to explain it in theory. Nice. But whenever I go to that chord, like you feel like oh my God, I lost my ground. Yeah, but something it's weird happening. And at the same time, like I got the drums and the bass and the guitars. If you just try and count that, it's super hard to count. It's like 3/4 and then 5/8 and then 6/4, 2/4. It keeps changing all the time. But I layered the vocal melody and the saxophone melodies on top of it. And those melodies just ignore that everything's weird behind it. Just kind of sing kind of straight. I start to sing on the odd time signature, like on the end, right? And then we finally meet back at the end of that huge phrase. So if someone would just sit down and listen and not try to count, then they would naturally focus on the lead melody. And they would think like, oh, this is a 3/4 song, not a big deal. But then when you try to play it or count it or try to transcribe it,
what is going on?
You're gonna like, what the hell is going on here? Right?
Yeah, I bet. No, that's really cool. And I mean, we've spoken a little bit about this before as well with progressive music and things in general. It's like, I think both you and I, we really enjoy that kind of intricacy and complexity. But like, I mean, you said it there for yourself with the melody and everything. Like, despite all that's going on, it doesn't necessarily seem that way from the offset. It's not like gratuitous, you know. And especially if you're listening without thinking about it, then you're not really noticing necessarily, you know, the technicality of it. It's not in your face in that way. It's very much just used in a kind of impressionist way to paint that picture, to create this vibe that's there. And it's otherwise, again, very melodic and quite, you know, nice to listen to. So, I mean, I was wondering, maybe you can say it better, this kind of approach that you have to progressive music in the way you use it to kind of like in a more expressive terms.
Yeah, I try to get the complexity to be felt and not really thought of, right? As you started, you know, like, oh, there's this feeling of something ethereal going on, and all those elements, they are playing into making you feel like that. But then you can also just like switch back and just acknowledge that feel and experience the song without having to worry about the technicalities. And I think it's something that I myself kind of am a critic, or it's something that on modern progressive rock or even metal or metal as a whole nowadays, and Steven Wilson actually said it better than I could, which is it looks like a sport. It's extremely impressive. It's extremely hard to play. Like I hear it, and as a musician, I'm like, well, that's insane. That's super cool, right? Yeah. But as someone who's not a musician, they might go on just like, that doesn't communicate to me emotionally. So it would be cool to just go into a stadium and like a sports Olympic situation and just be like, who can do the most complex and fast and hard piece to play? Yeah. But the old progressive rock, like if you go back to King Crimson, Yes, Gentle Giant, and those guys, you have extremely complex compositions going on, but there's always this melodic aspect of it that glues everything together. And that's why progressive rock at the time was very popular. Like, well, not super popular, but more popular than today, I think. And people that are not musicians and not into that explicit complexity would really enjoy it for the musicality and for the emotions that it conveys. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to bring back. But instead of just writing a song that is, you can hear it and be like, oh, that's 70s prog. I'm actually making it in a more modern situation. I'll spice it up with a little bit of metal, a little post-rock, and try to pull modern elements to it that makes you hear like, okay, that's a song from nowadays. Yeah. But it is progressive, but there's no shredding involved. There's no explicit just that choppy time signatures that are like, okay, this is in my face complex. It's like a background complexity, but with a melodic foreground. So you can get musicians that were really into complexity to like it and be like, oh, that's hard. That's interesting. I can really not count this. At the same time, that just your non-musician people who can't count music are just enjoying it for the melody. So that's my approach to it.
Yeah, that's great, man. I mean, I absolutely love what you've done. As you say, I think that your music sounds very fresh, to be honest. Like, you can obviously hear this callback to 70s prog, which is great. You know, I'm a big fan of 70s prog, but you know, there's no doubt that what you're doing sounds much more uniquely yours. It doesn't sound, you know, like King Crimson, despite the fact that, you know, you can hear the influence, you know, and obviously that's the way to do it. So yeah, man, I think you've done a great job with that, and
thanks.
Yeah, I love the music so far. On this second song, Sonhos, you had some other people playing on the track, right? And even in terms of what you're saying about gratuitous guitar solos, like the sax was doing all the work, saxophone on this song. That was awesome.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine called Ronaldo Rodriguez. Now, like, if you look at Brazilian prog bands, especially from Rio de Janeiro, today, he plays in 90% of them. It's like a legendary keyboard player in Brazil right now. And I think he's going to release his solo album soon, second volume. But he's great. And I met him back in Brazil. And I was like showing like the original demo from Sonhos. And like that, I was like, hey, here's what I'm composing. How do you like that? He was like, dude, that's awesome. Like, why don't you make that into a real song? That was back before Pneumothorax, before I started to actually produce and record. And I was like, sure, yeah. Would you like to record some keyboards from it? And he was like, I'd love to. So he recorded some keyboards, some really nice organs on it, and the E piano at the end, like 2 different E pianos with similar melodies but different, which I pan hard left and right, which allows you, it adds up to your like, what's going on? Like, which melody should I focus on? And the ethereal thing. And then I was looking into a sax guy, because when I've written the melodies, I've written for saxophone. I really had that whole King Crimson, Mel Collins, Iceland's album thing in my head when I was composing it. I was like, I really need a saxophone here. And I programmed initially a MIDI saxophone, which really sounds awful, but it was there. It was there. And then I started to look for a saxophonist, and I found this guy in São Paulo, also Brazilian. He mainly plays like bossa nova and some jazz, but he's a terrific saxophone player. So I approached him, and he recorded alto sax for the main melody, a tenor sax for the harmonies, and then he also got a soprano sax, where he, like, when he sent me the tracks, he was just like, hey, here's an extra track for some improvs that I did throughout the song. So it really just improvised on top of the entire thing. And then I was like cutting little bits of it, which I felt like could integrate well in some parts. So I added some improvs here then with the soprano sax. But in the end, it turned out really nicely. The solo at the end is a saxophone solo. That's the melody that I've written. And he ends up with this like extremely complex thing that culminates into a callback to the original melody and original harmony to bridge that modulation gap. And that's completely King Crimson. Like I can get the King Crimson like super fast sax solos. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, and that's what I tried to put in there. And I approached him like, hey, here's the music sheet that's super fast and a lot of notes. And it was like, sure, no biggie. And he did a great job on it. And I'm really glad I worked with him on it.
Yeah, wow, yeah, he did an amazing job. The sax sounds amazing. And then you went and mixed it all yourself again.
Yes.
I guess,
yes.
Yeah. Wow. You did it real justice, man. I mean, and you do hear. Again, as I say, I think Pneumothorax was mixed really well, to be honest. But yeah, you do hear the development from this song, and the drums sounded really good as well. But yeah, that sax is, so rich, such great tones. So that was a great investment.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. The next song, I'm actually gonna get violins this time.
Ah, nice. So you get to play around, feature all these different things. So I was assuming. So obviously, you already said on Pneumothorax, you did everything yourself. So you have this like flute solo, or at least like the flute in the intro. And I guess that was all MIDI then.
Yeah, it's a flute mellotron.
Ah, right. It sounds really good.
Yeah, it's
I thought that one worked really well, but yeah, the saxophone is just something else. There's just so much like blues in a saxophone that you just can't really program that. Yes. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some amazing sax plugin somewhere that has really great articulation or whatever, but I just I can't imagine that you'd be able to really mimic the saxophone playing like that, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So okay, so you mentioned a next song. Like what's happening going forward then?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually gonna be on vacations during September.
Cool. That's nice.
I gonna be like in India and Bali. And then yeah.
What are you gonna do? What's in Bali? Like yoga retreats?
No, while I am taking my wife, who is a yoga teacher,
nice.
We're actually exploring the jungle and getting out of like the most not staying too long on the most touristic places, and then going to some island hopping and stuff like that.
That sounds amazing, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. And once I'm back from that trip in October, I'm gonna go back to writing my next song, which I already have a intricate chord progression for it, and 2 or 3 riffs that all fit together nicely. And it's all on a Dorian sharp 4 scale, which is
that's a cool
underused.
scale.
A lot of people go into Phrygian dominant, but Dorian sharp 4, which is apparent, it's like not really that much used, and I felt like it worked really nicely on a violin. And I do have like a friend of mine who lives a few blocks away. He's a Spanish violinist player.
Wow.
And I got to get him to do the violins on it. And kind of do like a little Arion type of guitar and violin, like call response going on into the song. And the thematics of it is actually a pretty deep one. And it's about passive genocide. So it has this super metal name to it, right? And I will have like some metal riffs, with those pinch harmonics on it. But it's gonna be a metaphor, and not gonna explicitly say it, but whoever knows will know, right? It's all about you can kill 500,000 people from mostly the same ethnics, not because you're there to kill them, but exactly the opposite. You're not doing anything, and that's why people are dying, right? And that's the whole, like, you can be the person who committed a genocide by not doing anything. It's a passive genocide. And that's kind of goes back, ties back pandemic and all those things. So that's my intent. And I'm picking each note and pinch harmonic that I use, each tritone that I use on that melody. It's it's tying back to those emotions.
So this one's sounding pretty heavy then.
I think it will be heavier than Sonhos for sure. It starts.
Sonhos is pretty chill.
Yeah, it's super chill.
Yeah.
It will start kind of mellow and acoustic, but still like a dark progression. And I'm trying to give some space in the song for me to sing low, because I have a really low voice, but my 2 songs right now, it didn't really get me to the lowest of my range, and try and sing something like this, like super deep, that kind of like super deep voice, and then climb up my 4 octaves to my highest range and try and do that on the most intense, like distorted part. I'll sing high and cut through the mix, but on the acoustic, like things I will be able to sing dark and set that dark, like a background of the passive genocide theme.
Wow, man, I'm very excited for that. That sounds intense. You really do pick your topics, man, like, and really create like an experience with it. So yeah, that's amazing, man. And how about lyrics? Like, this last song was in Portuguese, obviously. Do you plan to sing more in Portuguese or English, or just kind of whatever fits the song?
Whatever fits the song. I think this one, it's gonna be in English, because the message, I think I want more people to understand it. But I might sneak in, I don't know, a little Portuguese, little bridge here or there. Cool. I don't know. The song's gonna write itself, so I can't say yet, because I don't know myself. Right, as I start to put together and the section that are gonna work out. But it's interesting. Like, I have, and it as everything that you've hearing me like about my intentions, I have a little way of writing lyrics. Which are like quite unique. At least I shared with some friends, and they're like, "Dude, what the hell? You're a programmer, like writing lyrics." Like I have like this little diagram. Like, here's the intent, here's the core message that will become a chorus, and then a verse 1. It's gonna be like, for example, I could say verse 1 is gonna be one perspective. Verse 2 could be a second perspective, and shifting from one verse to the other is shifting perspectives. Or I can say shifting from one verse to the other is shifting. It's just going in time, progressing in time. So I'll set up like, how do I want this to progress? Is it a time progression? Is it a perspective shift? Is it like two people like talking to each other? And then I'll go in like, there's a message for the first verse. Here's the other message. And then I'll do like a little cloud of words that fit those messages. And then I'll go and write each verse with, but it's now when I'm actually writing the verse, I'm very targeted. I know exactly what's the message. I know what kind of words I want to use. And then I just have to pick whatever fits the vocal melody, because I will write the vocal melody first. And then maybe I'll tweak it to fit the phrasing. But that's how I go about writing lyrics. That's very cool. It's very technical. And some people think like lyrics is something that just get inspired and you sit down and you write it up, right? So, or even music in general is like you sit down and you get inspired and then you throw a music out and it just goes like that. But that's not it for me. For me, it's really, I will get some inspiration, which will get me something. And then I have to shape that something and add a lot of things and use all the techniques and theory in order to turn that into an actual song. Maybe the inspiration is just a riff on 10 seconds, and then I got to make that into a 7-minute song.
Man, I love that. That's so cool. And that's the beauty of it all, is that like we're all unique, you know, we all have our own approach. And as you say, like that can work perfectly well for somebody to just get inspired and then boom, just stream of consciousness comes out of them.
Yeah.
Man, lots of the best music ever written may have been made like that, or will, you know, has been made like that. And yeah, you know, other stuff is made with a different approach, like perhaps more similar to what you have, and that's really cool, man. I really like that that approach. I have, you know, I would say that I have taken similar approach in some ways with some things that I
Nice.
do, especially when you're because the thing is what it sounds like to me is almost like you're like mapping out a narrative, right?
A
Because
diagram, yeah.
yeah, there's a story you want to tell here, and so because you want the story lyrically and topically to flow with the music as well, because the music's all part of telling that story. And like, yeah, I really kind of love that approach. And that's you know, if you're writing something like a opera, right, or a rock opera, metal opera, you know, speaking about Pink Floyd, Arion, you know, these things,
Yeah.
you kind of need to do that to some extent, right? Because you have to work out how to tell a good story, you know, and that's what, especially if you're writing, yeah, an opera, a musical or whatever, like, yeah, you need good music and you need good story. And so to make those two things work together, it does take a pretty involved process like this. So, yeah.
Yeah. An oversimplified way to describe what I would consider a mistake in songwriting, storytelling. It's like, why is your chorus all the major chords, but your lyrics and your message is so sad? Right.
Yeah.
That would be like, of course, like that's an easy oversimplified way of putting it.
Yeah.
But it goes like note by notes, right? Maybe you're belting a major third, but you're belting pain, right? No, like if you want to belt pain, belt a sharp 4, right? That's gonna really get the pain feeling through.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. And there is this spectrum, like you mentioned about in the 70s, prog rock was more popular and accessible. And the thing is, there is like, especially in terms of mainstream, your everyday listener, it essentially, like, musicality has kind of like continuously been watered down in a way, you know, to the point that commercial pop music now is like very rudimental. It's like blocks, you know, like same kind of 4 chord sequences in almost every song, right? And that means, as you say, it doesn't even matter what the song is about, it's going to be over the same formula anyway, you know, because that's just digestible enough for people, you know. And the other end of the spectrum would go back all the way even past prog rock, all the way to classical music, you know, which is obviously, especially like symphonic music, it's densely layered and there is infinite expression and, you know, potentially even no voice there, because like, yeah, you're telling a story and painting a picture with, as you say, a fast run of, you know, staccato flurries with the violins or whatever. That means something, it represents something, you know. And you know, back in the day, people were patient enough and sophisticated enough to take that in on a, you know, on a mass basis. And obviously there's still you know, there's still a market for that, you know. People like you and I and many others are interested in those details, but that's why in this kind of internet age, you know, it's all like we have an abundance of options in a way, you know. There's the radio music and that's kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then there's like everything available to you and you can just choose, you know, what resonates with you. And so it's wonderful.
Yeah. And the answer is probably, at least from my case, in between all of that. Because even like I've been studying more or analyzing more pop music nowadays. And like the axis, cool, the axis progression, right? Like you, it's a 4-chord loop where one chord feels more like home, then the second chord goes away from home. Third chord gets you back to home. 4th chord away from home. So you're always going away and back, away and back. And it puts in a way where you don't know where the 1 chord is. And it's great for if you want to get a message. Like, for example, if I would write a song about time travel when someone is stuck in a time loop, I would probably use that progression because it's a perfect expression of this. And pop artists, they're also really good at motives. they will get a little short phrase like with
Right,
three,
yeah,
four
sure.
notes, which are like, damn, that I can't get this out of my head. I only
Yeah,
heard it
hooks.
twice.
That's it.
Right. And the motives, and then they're great at exploring, like go and write a different section of the song where you're gonna hear the same motive, but one note is different, or the rhythm is a little different, right? But it's still, it has a lot of cohesion. Like you can hear a section of the song and you know it's the same song because of the usage of that same modified motive, right? So music, it's repetition and variation, right? You have to repeat enough so the brain understands that it's the same song and there's cohesion, but you need enough variation so that the listener doesn't get bored. And maybe pop, it's too much about repetition and not as much as variation, but repetition is important on songwriting, and
sure.
catching some of the motives and loops, ideas from pop and applying it into a prog rock genre. Will really get you to write songs more like, of course, I'll never write like Pink Floyd did. They're the masters, but you can see that it is those motives, it is those looped chord progressions that make something like Shine on You, Crazy Diamonds, all the parts feel like it's the same thing, but it's always varying to the point that you're always interested in the song and never bored. But yeah, so I feel like it's in between. If you go to any extremes, you're going to find your own niche. You're going to find your own listeners and people who are into these extremes. But it's super hard to balance. And I like challenges.
Yeah. Nice, man. I love that. Very, very cool, man. Yeah, you're right. The whole spectrum lies between, and that's where we can all kind of choose our preferences and choose our creative, places and all of that. And I really love the place that you've chosen for your music in there. I'm really excited to hear your next song and everything else that you do from there. Is that your idea? Is like you're taking one song at a time, and because they're quite big progressive rock songs, it's quite an involved process, so it's just one at a time. They're each just like a chapter.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I can only do what's on my hands, with the limited time that I have. So I'm just going to work on that. And once that's ready, once I'm happy with it, just going to share it with people. What's the sense on like waiting and sitting on songs to get a full album? Especially because once you release a full album, you can only really market one song, right? So you're just missing the opportunity
it's the same thing.
to market every single one of them. So that's what I'm doing. But in the process, I'm also working with collabs. Like I just recorded vocals for a power metal song from my friend Jeff Black, who he will release sometime during fall. But it was a quite fun collaboration, extremely hard to sing song, super high, super intense. And while I, as a composer, do prog rock, myself as a singer, I sing a lot of metal because that challenges me on my technique.
Yeah, power metal, the full wailing, epic screams and stuff.
In the meantime, right, while I'm working on this other full songs composition, which demands of me a lot of time composing and recording, editing, mixing, it takes forever.
Yeah, massive.
Collabs are great to fill the gaps where I can just work on lyrics, melody, and then record my vocals, and then I send it out, and the whole like editing and mixing and all of the other instruments are handled by someone else that helps me get something fresh out there. That's not directly my composition, but I helped on some melodies, and there's my voice on it while I get to work on the longer prog rock, more epic songs.
Great, man. That's cool. That sounds like a great way of going about it. Is there anything else then that you're like interested in getting involved with? Like, for instance, you said about being more into pop music, doing power metal. Like, is there anything else that you're kind of considering or would enjoy doing aside from the prog rock solo music?
Jazz.
Wow, cool. Jazz singing?
Jazz. It's
cool, man.
what I really dig about jazz is the jazz composition and music theory, where all the chains are broken and everything is allowed as long as you justify it with voice leading. Yeah, and that really helps me also in my composition, just observing how jazz is so free. You can change scales on every chord. It doesn't matter. You can put any chord in there, like modulate every single 20 seconds, and there's not a problem. It always feels correct. You can even play two chords that are unrelated and two progressions that are not related at the same time, and it's still gonna work. It's gonna work if you know what you're doing, right? And it's gonna work if you have the voice leadings, if you use the right chording versions. And then just looking at the chords and the harmony by, just like we did back on sheet music, right, on classical, you will get one melody line, you know, there's the soprano line, you have the tenor line, you have the bass line, the baritone line, and they're all separate melodies that together form a chord. But if you isolate and go just on the melody and you make that a memorable melody, and you have that voice leading where you're just going chromatically down and just a chromatic scale, which doesn't have, you know, functional harmony sense by itself, but then you use the other voice to justify that with different chords, but which different chords which will never feel like they belong together, but because there's that one voice which is doing the chromatic descent that's within those harmonical chords, then you justify it and then it makes sense. And that's what jazz is all about. And I'm really passionate about studying that, not about singing on that, although singing those little weird voices are super hard because, you know, you train for scales, you want to go for the scale, but when you got to hit the notes which are not on the scale, it's hard to stay in pitch. But just the compositional aspects of jazz harmony, it's something I'm very passionate about.
That's cool, man. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, yeah, jazz is very inspiring in that way, and I suppose it sounds like you're definitely really into that boundary pushing kind of hard bebop and like free jazz and stuff, like really just kind of pushing it to the limit of breaking musical boundaries. Yeah, I love that. I as well, like, I would love to get more involved in jazz, but it's probably a little bit more in the long term for me. But you know, I didn't really have any like jazz grounding, you know, growing up or whatever. But like, especially over the last few years, listen to more and more jazz. I really love like bebop music and stuff.
Nice.
So it's so cool, man. It's so cool. But yeah, I don't know what I would where to start. I don't know if I'd really play jazz guitar or piano. It's all all seems a bit much for me at the moment.
the boundaries between the instruments, they just melt. It's just jazz.
Yeah. No, but it's cool, man. It definitely would. Yeah, it would be a lot of fun. I'd love to speak to you more about that. Like, I'd love to hear your recommendations of some jazz records as well. And yeah, if you ever get to play something or on a project, that would be super cool, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be playing jazz any time soon. I think there's a lot to learn before I get there. But I definitely like to study jazz and use that in my compositions.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, in terms of records, like I'm not super a connoisseur of jazz that I can get to like all the undergods or whatever, but just pick something like Bitches Brew with Miles Davis, and it's always gonna spin really nicely on any ambient.
Yeah, man. Yeah, right on. Yeah, and I mean you're into your vinyl records and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
you mentioned that before. So are you a big collector of vinyls?
I'm not a big collector of vinyls, but that's my preferred media for listening to music. I find that, especially on storytelling albums like Ariel and Pink Floyd,
Yeah.
listening to a song is not the same as listening to the full album.
Oh yeah.
And vinyl forces you to do that, right? It grants you. It's that connection with the music. Like when you put down a vinyl, you're now like, okay, so this is important. I'm spending my time to go and put it down. I'm even spending my time, like, I'm going to be reminded that the first side is over and I have to go there and flip it, right? So it forces me to connect to the music. It forces me to hear that song, which I might not like too much, but it's in between songs that I like, and I'm just going to let it flow. And maybe at some point I get like, now I understand why that song is in there. Now it makes sense, right? Rather than just scrolling through infinite skips on digital media, which just breaks the connection. Music becomes the background sometimes, where with vinyl, because you have to go and be physical about doing things about it, you cannot just forget about it. You have to go back and interact with the media, right? And that's pretty cool. It makes music become more foreground in a sense.
Oh man, I'm really with you on that. Like, I don't know, maybe we're just like old or old school or something, but and we'll just continue to age more and more from here. But like, admittedly, I'm not really a vinyl guy. I just haven't really had a collection. But I am really definitely still an albums guy. Like I always listen to albums. I don't know. I'm almost like a little bit sort of OCD with it. Like I want to hear the full album. I don't want to start it and not see it through. And I definitely don't want to skip tracks. And I must admit, like I still just can't really get the hack of playlists most of the time, unless like I have a reason for listening to a playlist. It just seems it's just too weird for me jumping around loads of different things. I want to like get into a record, you know, a band and this kind of sound, and like play it from start to finish, and that's the vibe for however long it's meant to be, 40 minutes, an hour, you know. And yeah, so I do everything through my monitoring system, and you know, at least from what I've got, that's the best sound that I can get. You know, I've treated this room and got it to sound as good as I could. Nice. So you know, really enjoyable experience. And I play everything digitally through there. But yeah, man, it's all albums.
Yeah. I actually don't have a treated room or even monitoring systems. I mix everything on this headphone over here. Nice. And but I do have a home theater with where I plug my my little record player. And
do you watch the wall in there whilst like shaking your chair?
Yeah, like
watching the wall.
Yeah, it's the big subwoofer and the living room. So it's great. I would check my mixes on it as well after a while, but
cool.
It's great to have something, you know, you can just spin it. Like you get people over and you're like, oh, just gonna spin a record in there. I think there's a certain charm to it, which, as you said, maybe just me being a boomer or hipster, but I kind of dig that.
No, man. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Like I just haven't invested in a vinyl collection, to be honest, but I probably would in the future when when I've got the cash.
One thing that I have on vinyl, which it's kind of harder to find outside of vinyls, is that I do have some Brazilian prog rock vinyls from the 70s, which are not like easily available online. Sometimes when you find them online, it's just someone that ripped it from
dodgy quality.
The vinyl itself. It's not really recorded like digitally, so they sound better on vinyl because they were made for vinyl.
Wow.
And that's where I can get like a lot of value from vinyls, being able to spin those records and connect to Brazilian prog rock, which is extremely unknown. Like outside of, even in Brazil, like people are not connected to Brazilian prog rock, but there are masterpieces on it. Like there are bands and records which is seriously put it like to the same scale and level as like King Crimson and Yes and those things. And these guys are just doing amazing with really bad equipment because it was super expensive at the time, especially in Brazil.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like Brazilian prog rock. When I wrote Sonhos, I was fully in Brazilian prog rock, and writing in Portuguese was very intentional because I was like trying to, you know, like shout out to Brazilian prog rock.
Wow. Nice.
And vinyl does connect me to that.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Yeah, that's so cool. No, I think that, as you say, it all comes down to ultimately just about treating music with respect. You know, it is sad, the whole kind of, as you say, like background noise, basically. You know, but yeah, it's to their own, I suppose. Like, yeah, you got standard people and you know, radio music, and it's all kind of background, and yeah, that's fine for what it is. But yeah, I mean, luckily there's more than enough people out there that I think still really value that connection to music. So, you know, it's all good. And especially in the kind of rock and metal world, I think that there's a much larger sense of that kind of respect for music still. So that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, I don't even know how long we've been speaking. Quite a while, I think now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you want to bring up? Any kind of like promotion and stuff? People got to listen to Sonhos, right?
Yeah, people like. I love to hear what people are thinking on Sonhos, also Pneumothorax, right? There's not just that people listen to it, but I want to connect to what was the listener experience when I was listening to it, because that's very important to me. It's more important than just listening to the song. It's just like, what did you feel? Like, what was the impact on your life during those 7 minutes or so? Right. So that's something I would really like the feedback on. But, you know, you can find it anywhere on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Bandcamp. Anything else like that. I will be recording a video, like just playing myself here, and I got the other guys who recorded the other instruments to record them as well. I might blend it with some of the Vancouver nature images that we're gonna record it over here, and hopefully I'll get it out there before the end of the month or so, or if not, then you know, when I'm back from Bali. And yeah, so and I'm also very open for collaborations. If people have music that I can connect to, I'd love to lend my voice and collaborate, because I'm passionate about singing. And yeah, it would be great to do more collabs as well.
Oh, great stuff. Cool, man. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would especially recommend people check out I really like the lyric videos that you got on YouTube, because just those animations of the artwork like really helps bring you in to the experience. But yeah, otherwise, man, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and you know, love chatting with you. I'm sure we could keep chatting about all kinds of stuff.
It would take forever.
Yeah, we'll have to continue, you know, in our own time. But yeah, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It was I had a lot of fun. You could say that.
Cool. We'll do it again sometime, man.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. A special thanks to Leo for joining me. I really enjoyed our conversation. You can check out all of Leo's links at withkoji.com/@Leo Maia Prog. Links will be in the show notes. Go and show Leo some love, and I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, my friends, take care.